All right, we are live. So I don't know if I'm going to do this. I think I'm going to do this every single man. The goal is to do it every single Friday, but we'll see if I can do it every single Friday or not because my life is crazy right now. But every single week, what I'm going to be doing is I'm going to be pulling a topic regarding around anything that I actually have experience in. I don't like to preach from stuff I don't know or don't understand, but thankfully I'm blessed to know a lot of people in my life who do understand a lot of things. So this week the main topic is investing while in the military, and I successfully bought my first rental property actually while I was in the military. And actually purchased my first personal house as I was transitioning out of the military here in San Diego. And what's interesting is the first property I ever purchased was actually not the one I lived in, which is weird to most people because most people think, oh, your first investment has to be the one you live in. Not true at all. In fact, I think it really depends for most people, especially if you're like people who are stationed like San Diego or near Los Angeles or like these expensive cities. Like they're in places where it probably just doesn't make sense for them to necessarily buy a home, or maybe they can't afford it, but they want to get into real estate. And that's why, you know, getting into a rental property, especially while you're in the military, can be a really, really advantageous thing. The question is like, how is it possible and how do you go about that? So I'm going to kind of share my story about how I went through the process of getting that in while I was in the military, how I got to that point, what brought me to, how I found it, why I chose the area I did, how I did it, especially with a lot of support from my wife during those times to make it happen, especially as she was the one who primarily managed the property. But, you know, it's one of those things. And the first thing that struggles with a lot of people is obviously is when you're not living in a property, it's like, where do you get the money? And unfortunately, for a lot of service members in the military, I think one of the biggest issues is figuring out how you can afford it. Every single day, I have to talk to veterans who are in a lot of debt, or they have bad credit, or they don't know how to get out of that race that they're in. And really, it all starts with managing your money. If you can figure out how to manage your money, figure it out, then you can get to the first step, which is doing it. Now, I'll also tell you. So what I did was obviously I try and keep my car payment low. I only had a couple $100 a month car payment, which is probably still more than maybe I should have at the time. But what I did was every debt I went on, every deployment, I had one deployment under my belt before I bought that first rental property. And I believe actually, no, I had two deployments. So what I did was I saved money during that process, and I I needed about, so the property was worth about $109,000. It was a townhome in Yuma, Arizona. But before I get into the details of that property, how I got about purchasing it, because I actually had to raise some money from family to be able to purchase that property. I want to tell you that, I Red Rich Dad Poor Dad, like a lot of people do in the military. A lot of veterans I talk to, they know they want to either start a business or they want to invest in real estate. And they're like, how do I get to that place? I have the excitement. They're like, yeah, I'm going to do it when I get out. I'm going to do it when I get out. Personally, that would have been me. Thankfully, I met my wife. And, I still remember to this day, we were just sitting down talking at one point, and she's like, telling about the books I just read when I was on a detachment for a couple months in Arizona. I was like, hey, I want to do this. Like, I know real estate is where I want to go into. I don't know how, I don't know where, I just know I want to do it. And what's funny is, I still remember to this day, she was like, well, then why don't you do it? Like, it was like such a silly question for me to hear, because like, that's a good point. Like, why don't I do it? That doesn't make any sense. Why would I talk about it and not do it? So from that moment forward, we started figuring out, and obviously I'm working like 12 hours a day working on F-18s in Miramar in San Diego at the time. And she did a lot of the research, and, I was searching markets. I'm like, well, trying to see like, how can I make it work in San Diego? Like at this time I was like, oh, I could have bought a rental. I could have bought a condo here in San Diego. Cause I was still, I don't know. No, I hadn't picked up corporal yet. No, I did. No, I hadn't picked up sergeant. So I was an E4 at the time. And I'm like, I easily could have just bought something in San Diego and moved into it. But I didn't have that knowledge. And personally, I was just like, screw San Diego. I came from the East Coast. I was like, I don't want anything to do with that expensive California market, because I'm like, I don't see how the numbers make sense, because I'm just a very analytical guy. And I'm like, this doesn't make sense for me right now. And, I remember coming home one day and she's like, hey, you're going to Yuma in a couple months, right? I'm like, yeah, I picked up sergeant, and they're like, oh, fantastic. You can go to tour room in Yuma again, because I always keep getting stuck there. And she's like, why don't we buy something in Yuma? I'm like, what do you mean buy something in Yuma? This sounds ridiculous. Like, why would we even look at Yuma? Like, no way. Like, I don't see why anyone would even want to live in Yuma, because I didn't know much about it at the time. I just got stationed there. It was like my third time heading to Yuma, Arizona, right? And, she started showing some properties, and I start running numbers. I'm like, well, this could make sense. I think I had about 12 grand saved up, maybe 14 grand saved up from a couple deployments and just kind of putting money away. I quit smoking before we had met a year and a half prior. Like I was like, I was trying to cut costs where I could. We were living with, my mother-in-law at the time. We were trying to save costs. I was very lucky in a lot of ways in San Diego that I was able to do that. But we had only been married not even a year. So thankfully what I did was, a lot of that money from BAH that we got from getting married a year prior, because I was deployed right before this summer of 2017. I just, saved a lot of money, put a lot of money away. We were very mindful of it. Obviously, we couldn't save as much as maybe we could have because, during the last deployment I had, she was pregnant with our first son. And he was only a month old when we were traveling to Yuma, and obviously Yuma's in bounds. For those, if you're watching this and somehow you're not a veteran, you're allowed to go so far. If it's a regular weekend, you can travel this far. If it's a 4-day weekend, you can go this far. Things like that. So we were able to drive to Yuma. They throw a 3-hour drive. The first issue we ran into was I was like, I don't know if I can fully afford this. I wasn't even pre-approved yet, which bad decision number one. Like I said, but I didn't know anything. I didn't know any better. I was like, all right, great. I'm just gonna work into this. And so we drive out there. We have a list of properties, and I think the day before, we're trying to figure out who's the agent that's going to let us into any of these properties. I didn't know anything about real estate at the time. Obviously, now I've been in the business a while and I know a lot more. But I was like, I don't know. I know. I need an agent. I need someone who's going to walk me through the process. And so the hardest thing I found in Yuma was finding a good agent who knew what the heck they were talking about. Because all that last deployment, I wasn't an expert, right? I had never done the deed, but I had studied and learned as much as I could. I practiced running numbers. I was like, okay, and by running numbers, I mean like how much do I need to put down on a property to get money out? Like what's my return? Like how much do I need? All that. And I had a general basis of what I wanted to do. I didn't have a full clear vision as much as I think you should getting into the practice, but we got lucky. We ended up finding, and dude, I don't know if you're going to see this, but I'm still friends with Monty to this day. We talk at least once a year, probably not too much, because we're still distant to a point, but she ended up finding an agent. I don't know where I think she found him online. I don't quite remember. Maybe she's watching this now and she'll comment, but Monty was like, I think he was living out of a truck at one point, and then he got into real estate and he just had a hustle. I think we were one of his first deals that he had. And speaking of which, I got a guest who I'm going to be bringing in here in a little bit. He's my business partner who's also in the Navy right now. But so Monty ended up showing us a couple properties, and freaking dude, we just got to a place where we finally found this new construction townhome. So when they build communities, you have homes that they build first to show people, hey, this is what the homes are going to look like. Well, one of those was for sale, and it was at a discount. So for $109,000, we were able to purchase that property. Here, let me let Ed in real quick. What's up, dude?
What's up, man? I hope you can hear me all right, because I'm in the car,
Well, you're looking better because you're grainy. So thankfully you don't have to get a full shot, dude. You're live though, dude. Just on YouTube right now. Facebook's giving me problems, so I had to share it to Facebook.
Oh, well, what's up, YouTube?
But yeah, man. So obviously this is Ed Wheeler. He's my partner in crime. We have two companies right now. We have Agents of the Armed Forces, which is a group dedicated to veterans, not only PCS and relocate, but also to build wealth in the process. Because it's not just about buying property; it's about making sure you do it in a smart way to actually benefit you. Especially like everyone, even if you're active duty, you will eventually get out of the military, and the decisions you make while you're in will impact your separation because it's not easy for most people. Yeah, even Martha commented that was our first property, but. We also own Tired Agents, so we're starting a new company to help agents freaking leverage themselves and actually get some time back in life, like good stuff.
Yes, sir.
But yeah, man, today's topic, investing while in the military. So let me finish my freaking story.
Oh, man.
But yeah, man, so
sorry.
My wife even commented right now. Yeah. She said, yeah, that was his first property. So yeah, that was the agent I used in Yuma to buy that first runoff property. We were his first deal, man. He was hustling. Monty's a hustler. And yeah, dude, we needed about $21,000 to put $20,000 down on that home. We came in as a second home. We were going to rent it out 3/4 of the year, and I was about $5K short. I had to raise money from friends and family. My mother-in-law actually took a personal loan out, and I took the responsibility of paying her back, and she gifted us some money in order to afford the rest of the down payment to qualify for that first place.
That's nuts.
I know. We ended up turning it into an Airbnb. So that was the and that's why when veterans come to us and they're like, "Oh, I just don't understand how I can get into it." I'm like, "Dude, I don't know what you're talking about. You're talking to the wrong guy." I'm like, because I was, man. And then not only when we closed on that property, we had to go back that same weekend and we were going to turn into an Airbnb. So we had about 3 weeks, right? And obviously for those who bought real estate understand you get about a month or two before you have to start making your mortgage payment. So that was our goal. We're like, fuck. I'm like, now we got to try and get this place ready. I wanted to make it a regular rental, and I realized the numbers just didn't make sense. We didn't, even with the down payment, I was like, crap, dude. The rents just hadn't blown up in Yuma yet. So it had to be an Airbnb. And we're like, well, let's give it a shot. So we scrounged the neighborhood. We were going on Pendleton and Miramar. We were like, if people were getting rid of stuff for free, we were taking it. Dude, we furnished that entire rental, that Airbnb. We furnished that place for under $1,000.
That's awesome, dude.
It was a 3-bed townhome in Yuma. Yeah. The shitty part was then we had to load up and take it from San Diego to Yuma. And so obviously how the military is, man. The Marine Corps sent me out there, so I couldn't help load. We got friends and family to help load the furniture to drive it out there. Martha coordinated the whole thing. I was checking in, being a lazy piece of POS to do it. And she was coordinating the whole thing and then had to pick me up on base because you can't freaking drive when you go there. And she had to pick me up. And then all of WTI, which is about 3 months long, we were trying to set up the property. She drove out here with our 2-month-old, 3-month-old at the time. And, man, yeah, dude, she was having to take care of him and drive me to and from work. And then I'd work 13 hours, come back. I was working night shift. And then I'd have to come back and I had to install the garage door opener, refinish all the cabinets. I was setting all that up while also working WTI.
Jeez. Yeah, it's not easy, right? You got to think you're still active duty, so it's a lot harder, and I'm sure that's what people will be coming in here to learn, how the heck do people even do this? Because I know people have asked me all the time, bro, how are you selling houses in your active duty? That doesn't make any sense. Do you have any time to sleep? And I'm like, well, yeah.
Well, I know, dude. Your highest year. How many deals did you close? Well, also wasn't it like 26?
No, it was 18.
18. But even think about that, man. How many agents do you know who do this full time? They're lucky to close 6 to 10.
Right.
And you were active duty.
Exactly.
Fuck, dude. You're even coming off work right now.
Yeah. And this is an early day. I'm usually off at 4, somewhere between 4 and 5 in the afternoon.
Yeah, something like that.
So, it's definitely I just want people to know it's definitely possible while you're active duty. Do you have to put in the work? Yeah, of course. But that's anything that's good in life. You got to put in the work. But it's 100% possible, and don't take anybody that says that you're not 100% or anything like that. They're dead wrong.
I know, dude. It's nuts. But that's one thing I think that's hard, for us is if you're in a position where you want to get into rentals or you want to get serious into real estate, whether it's getting your license or whatever, I'm like, it's possible. You got to put in the work. It sucks. I still remember one weekend when we had that rental, we had bad tenants, And because of Yuma the way it is, Airbnb was still, I mean, I call it the golden age because people didn't really know how to do it properly. So if you could do it properly, you'd freaking crush it. And we ended up, we had a tenant who just disappeared, found out she got arrested for over $1,000 crime in Yuma. And she had tenants who weren't like scheduled to be there. And we had an outdoor security camera and they weren't leaving well past due. And the
Oh,
police
wow.
told us it like sounds like a civil matter because they didn't, and by state law technically we're okay. Like they should have been able to go there and do a wellness check and kick them out because they don't
Right.
have any short-term rental laws protecting people like housing. You're not a regular tenant if you stay less than 30 days. So we had to go there and check the property. Thankfully, by the time we got there, they were gone. But yeah, I had to get off work at like 6 on a Friday and drove straight out there.
Jeez.
Yeah.
Well, isn't it even easier now to do like Airbnbs because they have all these now they have like all these systems, right, that you can utilize where
Managing it
you
is
can.
easier, but I
I'm
think the
sorry.
golden age of Airbnb is not quite there anymore. I think a lot of
Gotcha.
people see it as a golden ticket. I like Airbnb arbitrage. So for people who don't have money, what you do is you go to, and you can do this in the military too, but you go to landlords, right, who have rentals, and you say, you just say, hey, like I see you have a rental, how about my business becomes your tenant? I pay you a little bit more, and then you allow me to short-term rent this, or a big thing nowadays is midterm rentals. So traveling nurses, doctors, those professions that take care of properties really well, but they travel a lot. It's
Right.
becoming a big thing for a lot of people. I've seen a lot of people make six figures getting into that profession. Where now me, I don't like Airbnb. I just don't. I'd rather do Section 8 before I got back into that industry. It's just not for me. The
Right.
hospital mentality and having to take care of people like that level of service. I'd rather be able to make the place nice and take care of a Section 8 tenant. But yeah, a lot of people will get into Airbnb arbitrage, and if you don't have the money, but you can furnish a property, that's a way to get in to where you might not own the property, but you get the benefit of its location and its value to rent it out. So it can be beneficial.
Yeah.
Obviously, cities like San Diego, Orlando, any big metro, they're having a lot of laws and taxes against it. So that's a
Right,
big
because a lot of people aren't letting, like, I know, well, when I was stationed in Virginia, they weren't letting people sublet on their lease. So you can't.
Well, and as a landlord, I would have the same provision in place.
Right.
Obviously, if you're doing Airbnb arbitrage as a business, it would be smart of you to make sure that the owner knows you're doing it, because then you're not at threat of a lawsuit. I'm really of the opinion if you're going to do something, do it the right way. Don't just be an idiot and not have anything signed when you go in to do it. But yeah, man, I mean, it's there's a lot of ways to get into it when you don't have money, and that can be a great way. A lot of people, my thing is when something becomes really popular, everyone tries to jump in and do it. Like it's a get rich quick scheme. And the reality is like there is no get rich quick. I mean, I tell you that one rental property did not change my life. It didn't. A lot of people think one property is going to change their life. They're like, oh, I just need to get that one rental. It's not really, man. It takes a lot more than that to actually change your life. I mean, I was averaging between $500 and $700 profit per month, averaged out over a year. And then I changed it to a long-term rental towards the last 2 years I owned it. And that number went down closer to like $150 a month profit. But, the reality is, I mean, I did end up netting about $50,000 when I sold it right before COVID. But I learned a good lesson is I didn't manage our personal finances well enough when I got out of the military. Left my job, tried to start a mobile notary business, and accrued a lot of debt. Now, the cool thing is I bought that property, and it brought us back to zero at that time. So, it was a blessing. But at the same time, the smart way would have been to figure out how to increase my active income to pay off the debt. And then that $50,000 could have how many more properties? Imagine if I bought 2 more properties with that money, or just a really good single family in a good location, bro. I mean, how much would that have been worth once that COVID inflation took off? So, there's a lot of things I know now that I would have changed the way I did it.
Well, yeah, I mean, that's why, there's a lot of guys that I talk to, especially now that I'm coming up on retiring out of the military. There's a lot of guys that are asking questions like, well, what do I do and how do I get started and all that kind of stuff. And I'm usually like, just get started. I mean, if you could follow somebody, cool, but get started now, because you don't want to kind of like what you fell into. You don't want to like get out and then all of a sudden, your family's depending on that money, but you don't necessarily have anything coming in.
Right. No, exactly, man. I mean, that's why like a lot of people want to jump feet first and go all in with any real estate endeavor. I think I'm more of the opinion that staying at a job and doing what you have in your free time is a better way to go. It really depends on what you're trying to do. I mean, there's a lot of obviously we know a lot of ways to get involved, even if you're active duty, man. I mean, what I know now, fuck, dude, I would have been a lot stronger financially, or would have had something started even before I got out. I mean, Jesus, a real estate license, like you don't even have to help the clients. You can refer them out up to 35% referral fee. You could be a lender and work from anywhere. You could wholesale. You can do a lot of things without having to physically be somewhere nowadays. And if I knew what I knew then, oh, dude, you at least could have been an extra $5K a month.
Right. I mean, yeah. That's what I do now. You know that.
Yeah.
Some of the other guys don't, but like, I was stationed in Norfolk. That's where I got my real estate license, and now I'm in Jacksonville. And all of the clients that I get coming into Norfolk, they go to an agent that I have up there, and I refer them out.
Yeah. What's the biggest struggle you've had trying to make it work while active duty?
Oh man, well, it's probably right now, which is time.
Yeah.
Honestly, that's probably gonna be your biggest thing anyway. But like, it's the time between like you're trying to be good at your job while you're active duty, right? You're trying to make rank and all that kind of stuff, and then you're trying to build a business on the side. But then also, I have a family too, so I have to pay attention to my family as well. I can't just let that slide, or else the whole reason I'm doing this is going to go down the tubes. So,
right.
I think it's time, but there's ways to mitigate that. Like you put in place these systems, these processes, and start hiring people so that way you can get it off your plate.
Right. No, I agree, man. I mean, because even like the blessing of being active duty is it's like you get an open door to relationships that you can leverage. Because once you get out, a lot of them disappear. They just don't exist anymore because everyone just wants to disappear and do their own thing again.
Right.
I mean, the good thing is, a lot of guys retire, and you're only a couple years from retirement. A lot of people get out of retirement. I know you've seen it too. Like they just like, dude, what's my wife? Like, what's my life? Like, what's the point now? And the cool thing is you're building that before you get out.
Yeah, I try not to toot my own horn, but I will say that when it comes to having a plan in place and other people kind of looking at what I'm doing, all of them are saying like, "Hey, you did it right because like you're doing it now.
Yeah,
you're not waiting until you get out."
Yeah, dude. And no matter when you get out, whether it's 5 years or 20 or 4, yeah, dude. Not having something started and trying to start it after you get out, dude. It's just like it's a train wreck. Most times, Yeah,
and I think like especially like you were saying before, it's like even if you get out and you have another job and then you start doing something, that's fine too. I think you need to have that income and then let your business as you grow it put you out of a job.
Yeah. No, I agree, man. So if you were to start over, and I know you're only a couple years into this endeavor, would you have gone the same route you already have? Because you've hopped around a couple of you've been in.
I would say yes and no. I mean, obviously, I think the biggest thing about it is I've learned a lot since I started. So, are there things that I would have changed? Yes. Would I be doing the same thing right now? Yes. Just because, like, the things that I learn, and I constantly try to learn, but the things that I'm learning, if I could have implemented them at the beginning, I'd probably be in a much different situation.
Yeah.
But I mean, yeah. I mean, any business, the sky's the limit. Um, I would say just keep going. I mean, like
Yeah.
you got to keep going, no matter
Yeah.
what.
Let's switch gears real quick. Let's give some actionable information. So someone's active duty right now, and let's teach them how do you get in, how do you get into your first investment? Like what route should you go? Should you buy your own place? Should you look outside of where you're stationed? Like let's take a deep dive into this topic. Because obviously we have, especially like I'm working with a pilot out of Miramar right now. And they're looking at multifamily. Him and his wife own 3 homes outside in other areas. Let's talk about what's some first steps someone in active duty could take in terms of investing.
Sure. I mean, I think it's a little bit. Obviously it's a little bit harder for enlisted to necessarily do it, but it's the same concept. I mean, really, to me, and you might differ because some other investment or ways to invest, but like just buy your first home and live in it. You get a VA loan, like you have access to a VA loan, so zero down. Yeah, you have a funding fee that usually gets added onto the loan, but you're getting VAH, so make that use that to your advantage. Like you're not going to get the VAH when you get out, so it's better to buy a house, live in it, and then if you decide to buy another one, you can change that to a different loan.
Yeah, for sure, man. I mean, that's what I'm thinking back. I mean, I'm happy I had the experience of investing out of state because at some point, if you are active duty and you intend to stay in, you will PCS or leave that property, that first property you buy, and you have to be aware of what's the game plan. I think my standpoint with a lot of veterans is I think the first thing is what's your financial standing? I mean, I could easily. Yeah. So if you're watching this right now, I'm even happy to walk you through how to repair your own credit. Right. I've been very blessed with the individual I've met since getting out of the military. I can literally teach you how to call and send in your own letters to fix your credit. And I'm happy to do so. You literally can just comment here. If you look up Cameron Hodge in any social platform, you're going to find me. If you want, or freaking give my, here, I'm going to give a number out right now. You can text call to 858-289-0477. You text call to that number. I'll send you a link to set a time 15 minutes. I don't care what it is. I don't care if it's investing, getting your real estate license. I'm not some god. I don't know everything, but I'm blessed to know people who know a lot more than me. So I'm always happy to schedule a time we can talk and figure out what path you're on, especially if you're a veteran. I'm happy to just give my time. And I have moved to a point where I'm like, dude, no matter how busy I get, I want to leave myself open to anyone who needs help. So that number is always going to be open for you if you need it. And you just go back and replay that once this live is done. So I think I'll also put a comment about it too. Now, my thing with veterans is you got to figure out what's your financial situation. How's your debt? How's your credit? You need to fix it. And even if it's not a perfect credit score, that's okay. Don't worry about it. You don't necessarily need a perfect credit score. Really, the big number is first, can you even get approved enough for a house or condo where you're stationed? That's the first step. I am mixed. I don't necessarily think a veteran has to use their VA loan to purchase a property. Now, you have to live there, obviously, if you're using your VA loan. You can buy multifamily with it. So keep in mind, you can get a little creative with it. And now, a lot of veterans think house hacking is the way to go. I'll tell you, in most cities and current market, house hacking is not going to make you live for free. It just reduces. If you're lucky, you save about 10 to 25% of your BAH, which is still a blessing. You know what I mean? You get to get that much more. Right. Instead of spending all your BAH and then some, you get a little bit more in your pocket. So it's an option to go. My wife, she was never into living in a multifamily and having a tenant live next door to us. Not her thing. So if you have a spouse, you gotta make sure you talk with them to understand that. Obviously, we decided, me and my wife at the time, that we didn't want to buy a home right away. So that's why we went out of state. And remember, if you have the cash to put that 20% down, that could be a way to go. Or remember, it's not just about getting into real estate investing. There are other ways in real estate to build money without having to spend money. If you're looking to get property, there are some creative ways to go about it. I'm not going to go deep diving right now with all the creative ways. to get into a house with no money or low money, because that's going to take another hour by itself. But hey, that number I mentioned before, go ahead, text, call me, and I'll send you a link. We can get on a time to we'll schedule a time to talk on the phone, and I can go more in depth then. But yeah, but assuming you're just like a simple buying a house, that's the first thing. We got to make sure, I think you would agree, Ed, that the first thing is you got to understand, like, what's your goal with it? Because most likely, most veterans are on a 3 to 5 year cycle.
Exactly.
And you got to understand, like, hey, like, once that time comes, what are you looking to do? Are you going to be trying to buy a house in a good area that should hopefully gain some appreciation for you to sell it? Or are you looking to rent it? Because the cool thing, obviously, once your VA loan's tied in a property, like if you were to buy a house this year, you probably could refinance and get that VA loan out by the time you go to move. But remember, like, you can potentially buy 2 properties. I mean, one of our clients I'm dealing with right now, he has 2 properties under a VA loan. And he's going to buy a 3rd property, and guess what? He's probably going to go an FHA loan. Does that suck that it's not zero down, you're not using your VA loan? I think that's a load of crap. Because if you've already got 2 houses under a VA loan, and hey, after you live there for a year, you are allowed to move out of those properties and keep the VA loan in place and rent it. There's just that stipulation that you live there for that period of time. So it's not illegal.
Right.
Like everyone at the VA understands, like, hey, veterans freaking PCS. And to be honest with you, if you bought a house and you got emergency orders that you got moved, you probably can get out of it too. So don't stress about it.
You can. There's laws in place for that as well. Because if you have to transfer on orders, then it negates a lot of things.
Yeah. Now you just got PCS from Hampton Roads to Jacksonville. Why did you sell your house over renting it? What did it come down to?
So, well, really, it was the time frame that I had, and also, I don't know everything either, right? So, like, I didn't find out until after the fact that there's a rule where you can get a rental appraisal, and they'll appraise it for the rental value, and then they'll basically adjust your income based off of that, and then that way you can go get a new loan. So I didn't know that. So
my
because
question
of the time crunch
is,
and all that
do they require you to have 2 years of landlord experience? That seems to be the magic number.
So that one, I didn't go that far into it because I had already sold my house. I found out after the fact, right?
You're good. So for those watching, there's a magical number you're going to hear. Like, a lot of people are like, oh, you can use, like, freaking real estate agents are the worst, man. But they'll tell you, oh, you can use 75% of a property's rental income. So let's say it's a duplex, the other half's being rented. Well, you can use, let's say it's $1,000, you can use up to 75% of that, which is what, $750 to boost your income. So that's $1,000 a month. 75% of that is $750 per month that your income is boosted to purchase that property. The problem is, and no one ever talks about this, is that every lender I've seen so far will require you to have 2 years of landlord experience, meaning you own a rental, and for 2 years on tax returns, you disclose, hey, this is my rental property, here's all my income. You have to get 2 years of experience for that to be able to get the loophole to use that 75% rule. And the problem is, if you don't have that 2 years of experience, they're going to want a manager potentially set aside for you to use, but you're going to need 6 months of mortgage set aside.
Right.
And that sucks, because I went through that last October, one of my clients, and we could not find a lender who, now when things get tight and interest rates go up, that's why banks just don't play around anymore. They're being protective of their money. We've seen banks go out of business. So they require 6 months of mortgage reserves is what it's called. And I can tell you, as another enlisted before I got out, I would not have had 6 months of mortgage reserves to qualify. Now, don't forget, as a veteran, you can also combine your VA loan with another veteran. Just be aware that that's like a partnership. And I also have another situation where the partnership with my clients last year fell apart. And I disclosed the same thing I'm going to disclose to you watching right now. And that is, you have to be careful. If you're going to combine VA entitlements with another veteran, what happens is, let's say, easy math, you both have a $100,000 entitlement to purchase this property. Well, let's say the property is perfectly priced at $200 or whatever. You're only going to use half of each entitlement. So you both could potentially buy another property if your entitlement's enough. So instead of using the whole, say it's a $100,000 property, instead of you both using $100,000 of your entitlement, you're only using $50,000 each. Now, obviously, good luck finding $100,000 house in any station you're going to be in. But that's a general concept. And you got to be wary. Like any business partnership, you have to make sure you're aligned. Like, what do you got to talk everything. What are you going to do when you sell the property? What are you going to do when this happens or that happens? Just like if you're a spouse, you and your spouse are both in the military, that's what you're doing is combining entitlements. You technically still have separate entitlements, even though you're married. So you can also, like I've seen, like I said, like an E4 and an E5, because it's not fraternization. In most situations, they got together and they were able to buy a multifamily together. So it can work, especially if you have a good buddy who's like-minded to get into something like that, where you can benefit from it. But you got to be careful, because if one of you, like one smokes weed and gets kicked out, well, hey, if they are out without a job for a while, you're kind of screwed. And now you're having to foot that bill. Don't forget also, when you sell the property, you both are entitled to any money from that property. So it gets a little hairy, and it's like any business. Just like me and Ed, we taught. I mean, God, I think we've gone through every scenario, like operating agreement. Now, obviously, you're buying a personal house, so you're not necessarily going to have an operating agreement, but you need to make sure you cover everything. Hell, we even took personality tests just to see where we both lined up and how we thought. And we're like complete opposites, which is great. It's a good thing. But you have to be careful when you do that. Also, another cool thing that we can bring up right now, you can still get a low rate with a VA loan. So that VA assumption's a real thing. So let's say
usually go ahead.
So let's say last year, veteran bought a house. Let's say in San Diego, bought a house for, we'll say 700. It's gonna be crazy, but this applies to all markets. Like 700,000. Okay, and their rate was like 3.5%. They got a 3.5% before rates went crazy last June. Okay, they bought a house $700K. It appreciated heading into the summer, lost some value, and now let's say it's worth about 735, 740, right? We'll say 750. Easy math, okay? So they bought it for 700. They put no money down, and they paid it down during that time, which was 750. Let's say for some reason the loan never got paid down. Doesn't really matter, because we're just using easy math here to understand it. Because, hey, I'm a Marine. I eat crayons. And I'm not going to make this real math right now. You can call me if you want real math. So what happens is I say they want to sell the property. They're getting PCS. They're like, crap, I want to sell this property. Okay, we're going to assume that they're able to sell it and make enough money or break even. Okay, well, let's say you, the buyer, come in and you're like, wow, you have a 3.5% rate. I would love to have your rate. Well, every bank and lender is required to have a department. Now, it's probably super small. FHA is the same way, but VA and FHA loans allow you to assume rates. Now, I'm not going to talk about FHA right now because there's some cool loopholes in there. The VA loan is very cut and dry. And what it is, let's say you find someone. You don't even need an agent to do this technically, but let's say you find someone who's like, hey, I want to sell the property. It's worth $750. I owe $700. What happens is you, as the buyer, as a veteran, assuming the seller is a veteran with a VA loan on the property, you can come in and say, hey, bank, I want to take over that loan, and I will pay the $50,000 difference. Now, this could be less, it could be more. What it is you're paying the difference between what they owe and what you're paying on what you're buying the property for. Now, the process will take a while. It could take up to 45, 60 days. It really depends, right? Most lenders and banks are not doing too many of these, so it's going to be a process. But you can go in there and you can get that low rate. And if you're able to pay that difference between that $50,000, and assuming you're paying your closing costs too, the bank, in most cases, assuming you're able to qualify for that home at that price and that interest rate, they will put you on that loan for $700,000 at that low interest rate. And there you go. You are sold and ready to go. So it is possible. But like anything, you're either giving up time, you're giving up money. In this case, you're giving up money to do it. But I just had a condo I sold in San Diego. There was a buyer who was willing and able to do the VA assumption. He didn't even know it existed. Most people don't. I give it a caveat. I don't throw it around like some magic scheme, because usually most people have enough equity in their home nowadays to where most people probably can't pay that difference. But it is an option.
Absolutely. I mean, that VA assumption, I mean, it's in some cases it can be a game changer, but there are caveats to it, because not everybody can actually do it. Not everybody, not all the banks will do it. That's the biggest one, is trying to
Mhm.
find a bank that will actually, take care of
So
it.
they
But
are actually required, per the guidelines, to do it. They have to have a department, or they have to contract with a company that will do it. So if a
right,
bank tells you, but now I've gone through a lot of teaching. One of our good friends, who you probably saw in one of my other podcast episodes, Brian, has schooled me very much in this. I think he even has a YouTube channel with a full breakdown of this. They are required to allow it. The trick is obviously, I don't know how long it will take, because I have not had someone who's had the cash to make that difference yet, or the perfect scenario come up. But they are required to do it. And like anything in life, it's like when you go to return something at a store, right? And you get that one employee who really doesn't know what they're talking about, and you can call the bank and be like, "Hey, I want to do this." That doesn't exist. And it's like, no, you have to do it. Like this is
right,
required. You cannot say no. Like that's not how this works. They have to then at least hire off the assumption process to someone else. So,
right,
or I'm sorry, I remember the actual term. So, obviously, when you have a mortgage, what happens is banks always sell it. I'm sure if you've owned a house long enough, you have noticed how to be like, hey, congratulations. A bank is no longer your bank servicer. Now this is Bank B, and we bought your loan. So now you need to set up a new payment portal, and you need to pay us moving forward. It happens all the time. Your mortgage never stays with one company. Unless it's a small bank in the Midwest, you're probably changing hands every year. It's just how it works. Well, if Bank B does not have a VA assumption department, they have to sell the loan or give it back to Bank A, who originally has to. They're going to have a department that does it. So what happens is they have to sell it back to Bank A by law. Again, it adds to the time of closing, and it adds to the stress. So making sure the seller is aware of the process and what's going to happen is very
right.
important. Yeah, so they would have to give
But
it back.
and I can definitely see, especially with the way that the market has started to go, I can see the VA loan, the assumptions coming up a little bit more if people are interested,
Mm-hmm.
just because the home prices are not rising as rapidly as they were back in 2020, 2021
Yeah.
time frame. So, but during that time, I mean, I wish my seller was willing to do the assumption, because
Yeah, people are greedy.
2.5%
It is what it is,
would
man.
be great.
You can't avoid it. Yeah. I mean,
Right,
people are willing to do it. The trick in real estate is usually like, can you get to them before someone else does? I
right.
mean, I tell everyone, and I know you've heard it 1,000 times from me, I'm the real estate agent who hates other agents. I have my license, and I'm very picky about who I help and things like that. The reality is that most agents just infuriate me because they don't know what they're talking about, or they automatically assume that listing on the open market is the best solution. Hell, dude, I had a buyer, one of my buyers last year, like they had that partnership dissolved, and they were looking to sell their multifamily. And I'm like, look, man, we can either sell an agreement off market, and guess what? My mortgage isn't paid by hugs and kisses, and I am going to have to charge you a fee because I'm going to be putting 110% effort into it, and I got to do it. I'm like, but dude, like, you don't need me. Like, your money is so tight. Like, you can find someone. If you can find a buyer and you can vet them, I'm like, I can't really help you because by law, I'm not getting legally tied to it. But I'm like, you can go to a title company yourself and exchange that property. And as much as, like, I love to help clients and get involved to make sure that it's done right I've made a lot of mistakes between investing and personal homes, but I come with a price. And if you are in a situation, like, guess what? I'm fully honest. Is like, you can go to a title company and you can exchange homes yourself. The problem is like, do you have the time and money to do that? So there's always a risk, and there's always a reward and risk for everything. Can't even talk. But yeah,
Right.
there's pros and cons to everything.
Of course.
But hey, if you're watching this right now, me and Ed do have to go. We are hiring a social media manager, and I need to get off so that way I can hop on that call. So if you're watching this right now and you missed the rest of the episode, we covered a lot. I talked about some of my first experience in buying in a rental property in Yuma, Arizona when I was stationing in San Diego. And then we dove into, how can you get started in investing right now as a veteran, VA assumptions, how to get a low rate still in the market, how to buy multifamily, things to be aware of, some other cool tips and things like that. And one last time, if you want to get a hold of me and you want to get me on the phone, I'm going to pull up my number right now. As you can see, this is live, and I'm fat figuring this whole freaking thing. So you can call me to 858-289-0477. Text me. I'll send you a link. You can book a time, and we'll give you 15 minutes. I don't care what it is. Investing, business. I don't know a lot, but I know a lot of people who know a lot more than me, and I can put you in touch with whoever you need. So you can always reach out to me. Obviously, Ed. So you can just look at Ed Wheeler. I think if you look at me on social media, you're going to see me tied to him, like Tired Agents, Agents of the Armed Forces. You're going to find him. He was on a podcast episode not too long ago, and all his contact info is in there as well. So, Ed, brother, appreciate you being on this live show. Like I said, everyone, my goal is to probably do this every single week. It's going to vary. My life is crazy. My goal is just to be real talk, and this is going to be every Friday, either 9 a.m. Today was 11 a.m. because of some scheduling, but hey, it's going to be real stuff, everything to do about real estate, running a business as a veteran, just everything in between. So, all right, brother, we'll see you later, everyone, and have a freaking good rest of your day.